Honourable members, the time for this debate has expired. I therefore call on local order private and local orders of the day. Number 1.
Mount Maunganui Borough Reclamation and Empowering Act Repeal Bill, second reading.
I call the honourable member Te Araroa Flavel. Tēnā koe, Mr Flavel.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, ka nui te mihi kia koe tēnei ahi o tira ki a tātou te whare pāremata. Mr Speaker, I move that the Mount Maunganui Borough Reclamation and Empowering Act Repeal Bill be now read a second time. So this is an important bill on two counts, if I can start that way. Firstly, that there is a local nawe, a local concern, an issue of concern to the people of Rangataua Bay and more broadly across Tauranga Moana. And the second note of significance, sir, is the national picture, how the legacy of this bill will, we hope, influence greater power sharing with Māori right across the motu. If I can turn attention firstly to the sort of local perspective, Mr Speaker, and to give some background to those listening, this bill repeals the Mount Maunganui Borough Reclamation and Empowering Act of 1975, so it's been around for a while. The area we focused on in this legislation was taken by the Mount Maunganui Borough Council for the purposes of establishing a sewage pond, or sewage ponds at the eastern end, of Rangataua Bay, Te Tāhuna o Rangataua in my electorate of Wairiki and in the Tauranga area. In essence, Mr Speaker, the 1975 Act gave the Bay of Plenty Harbour Board the authority to transfer part of the seabed of Tauranga Harbour to the Mount Maunganui Borough Council, and then, sir, to add insult to injury, authorised the council to undertake reclamation of that part of the harbour for sewerage and other purposes. Mr Speaker, Ngā Pōtiki, as the local iwi, and individuals like the late Wiremu Ohia, Chair of the Tauranga Māori Executive, Paraone Rewiti, the MP for Eastern Māori at the time, were very, very vocal, protesting that the area was a source of food for the people and it had important history attached to it. In the submission to the Select Committee, their point of view was clearly outlined, and I quote from the submission: "For Ngā Pōtiki and indeed Tauranga Māori, the discharge of human waste into the pristine Te Tāhuna o Rangataua that had served as a pātaka kai for centuries was and remains utterly repugnant." End of quote. So you can understand, Mr Speaker, that Tauranga people were not happy. So what was particularly disturbing for Ngā Pōtiki is that the outfall pipe was going to head to the ocean by way of an urupa and wahitapu, in other words, a cemetery and some sacred sites. Mr Speaker, this was their ancestral landscape, confirmed by the awards of the Papamoa block to Ngā Pōtiki by the Crown Commissioners in the late 1880s. Mr Speaker, during the Select Committee time, what I found of particular interest was the objections of that day were not just voiced by Māori alone. Indeed, the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries and the Ministry of Transport also opposed the proposal to reclaim the foreshore and the seabed. At the same time, an environmental impact report established in 1974 concluded, and I quote, "A flourishing ecosystem on the tidal flats would be lost," end of quote, through our reclamation. The Commissioner for the Environment concluded that the reclamation could not be justified because of the impact on the area and the possibility of other sites being used. Mr Speaker, all parties, if we want to put it that way, were agreed that this was in an area of significant environmental and cultural value. And yet, sir, despite all of these objections, the Parliament of the day went ahead anyway, and 37 years on, here we are. We're finally listening to the wisdom of those who have gone before us. Mr Speaker, it hasn't just happened overnight. And I want to firstly acknowledge those people whom some 13 years ago started taking direct action to restore the land to its essence. And I want to be clear that the relationship we are repairing in this legislation is not just between mana whenua and the respective council. It is actually also about Ngā Pōtiki and its close relationship to the land, in particular Te Tāhuna o Rangataua. So we are recognising a history honoured through oral tradition, through waiata, pepeha and whakatauki proverbs. So this relationship was constantly referred to in the evidence submitted by Ngā Pōtiki Kaumātua to the Waitangi Tribunal held at Mangatawa Marae in 1999. At that time then, the people unanimously resolved to establish the trust to be known as Ngā Pōtiki Tamapahore Trust to represent and advocate Ngā Pōtiki's interests with the Crown. In 2000, the Tauranga City Council started a consultation process establishing the Tauranga Tangata Whenua Tauranga City Council Standing Committee to facilitate improved engagement between Māori and the Council. 4 years later, the Tauranga Moana Tangata Whenua Collective was established, bringing together representatives of all 15 iwi and Apu resident within the boundaries of Tauranga City Council. 13 of the 15, Mr. Speaker, have protocol agreements with the Council which outline how they will work together. So, if we fast track back from then to this bill, I want to say that and commend the Tauranga City Council for its recognition that while they have inherited an area which is still being utilised, a significant portion of the land originally taken will not be needed, and so they've moved to hand it back to the people. Awesome. Mr. Speaker, for me, it is great to see that the Council and iwi are working together, and I cannot work out why this hasn't happened probably far more often. When it does happen, it usually removes the angst by iwi and hapu and whānau about not being engaged and involved in decision-making as tangata whenua. And yet, we saw with the Rena disaster, a unified approach there is always the best approach. And so finally, this is where I want to focus on the broader and nationwide issues that this bill represents, Mr. Speaker. The Māori Party has always advocated for local government that they should and must, in fact, successfully engage Māori and secure full confidence, trust, faith and participation in decision-making processes. We invested considerable effort, Mr. Speaker, in the last term of Parliament in establishing the Mana Whenua Statutory Board in the Auckland City Council. We see Mana Whenua Statutory Boards as an important mechanism in power sharing with Māori. Mr. Speaker, I see what happened in this bill as another important step in assisting local government to be accountable and responsive when working with Mana Whenua. And I'd have to say how great it was to read the submission, and there was only one submission on this bill, Mr. Speaker, which was yet another example of a truly collaborative approach. I want to commend the Tauranga City Council for its declaration that it has no intention to further reclaim land in Te Tāhuna o Rangataua. And finally, sir, my thoughts return to those pakeke, those kaumātua from Ngā Pōtiki who protested against the original act, and indeed the representatives and advocates from local government and across the community. The repeal of the 1975 bill will, I hope, go some way towards healing the hurt caused by the impact of that legislation. I'm proud to have been the sponsor of this bill. In its healing capacity, I want to also acknowledge the very real potential there is as an important consequence of this legislation to strengthen and inspire a constructive and ever-growing respect between Ngā Pōtiki and the Tauranga City Council. The pathway has been set, and I truly believe that there is a positive way forward that has been acknowledged both by the City Council and by Ngā Pōtiki, and hopefully on the broader issue across Tauranga Moana. I note, sir, that in the Select Committee report that there was just one small amendment around a sunset clause which seems appropriate under the conditions, simply to try and tie the bill over to allow for the enactment of the bill, if you want to put it that way. And over and above that, with the one submission that came in to basically tie the two parties together, it seems to me that there should be unanimous support across the House for this bill to pass as it sits, with the addition of a sunset clause which would basically tidy it up and allow the iwi to have their land back, or at least acknowledgement that the land was wrongfully taken, should never have been taken, but that the bridges have been built to bring the parties together. I leave that with the House. Ka nui te mihi ki ngā te hunga o roto te kaunihira ka mutu ki a Ngā Pōtiki mo te kaha ki te whakatutuki tēnei kaupapa. Tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.
Mr. Speaker.
I call the honourable member